Saturday, April 24th. Today we're going to be spending some time in the front and seeing what's growing. Weather-wise, it's cooled off a bit, and like most in the country, we're seeing cooler weather. Unlike others who are getting snow, we are seeing temperatures in the mid 60s to upper 60s with overcast, and it is a lot cooler than what we're normally expecting at this time of year. Our artichokes are still growing. We've harvested quite a few, and we have also quite a few to harvest. We have a couple of varieties here. This is the Violet de Provence. It's a French heirloom variety. And then we have another plant here with a couple of artichokes. And if you're curious about what's growing in front, they are Utrecht wheat. It's an ornamental wheat, and we grow it for its cool looking wheat stalks. Over here we have an Italian heirloom variety, the purple of Ragmagna, and there is an additional Italian heirloom variety that hasn't made artichokes yet, and that's the Violetto. It's also another purple artichoke. And then we come down this way, we'll see this plant, which is loaded with many artichokes, and the petals are a little bit looser than I would like. Normally I would harvest the artichokes when they're a little bit tighter than this, and they have lots of tender, good artichoke parts on the inside. And that's one of the nice things about growing your own artichoke, is that you can control the harvest and get them early, mid, or even late. And then you can also let some go to flower, like what we're doing with the ones that are back this way. So let's continue on and look at what's growing in the rest of our garden. Here we have a bolting cilantro, and it's going to bring some pollinators to the area. And then there is a little island here that I haven't shown before, and we have some things growing like this comfrey, and then next to it is some Russian sage, and we have broad beans that we grow to collect as biomass to create soil with. And then when we swing around to the back side, we'll see a raspberry plant. This variety is Heritage. It's my favorite one to grow. It's ever-bearing raspberry, which means you'll get 2 harvests out of the year, and it's supposed to produce raspberries on new canes, so you don't have to wait too long. And then right behind is a dill plant, and out in the front I like to layer plants with different foliage colors and have more of an ornamental appeal. Down here in this trough, I planted down some seed potatoes. We have some French fingerling potatoes, and those are a new variety to us. We're hoping that this microclimate will allow us to get a good harvest. It's going to be warm and quite warm for potatoes, but if we find a good microclimate, we should be able to get a good harvest. In this little island here, we have some sweet peas. Sweet peas are really pretty, and you never know what kind of blossoms they make in terms of color and pattern. And what I like about them is that they produce a lot of biomass, which we will then use to create soil with. We grow quite a lot of things, so to purchase soil, it can really get in at our budget. So we try to create as much soil as possible. And we'll look over here at the main portion of our front yard garden, where we have the Japonica striped maize that's getting taller, and its variegated leaves is now very pronounced, and we grow it for its foliage. The corn itself is not sweet. It's more of a flint corn or meal corn that you can use to cook with. And then right below it are some soybean. So we have quite a few plants planted. In the past, we didn't plant enough, and we wouldn't get enough of a harvest to make it worthwhile. So hopefully this year we'll achieve our goal of having enough edamame to enjoy in the kitchen. Next to edamame, we see some marigold, and marigold is a great plant to grow. They are supposed to attract and trap nematodes, root knot nematodes. They have pretty flowers. They also repel pests, so we're always growing those guys. And then next to the marigold is one of my favorite vegetables. This is asperbrock. It goes by the trademark name of broccolini. This is a hybrid between Chinese kale and broccoli, and it produces a tender shoot that is a little bit sweet, so it's a really good tasting green, and we are in need of harvesting them. We already got the main stock, but we need to harvest them because they taste a little bit better when the flowers are more tightly clustered. Here we have a cabbage, and this is something that we're growing for the first time. This is the Savoy Cabbage. Getting a good head is something that's been on the to-do list. It'd be fun to harvest a nice big cabbage. And we're a little bit late in the year to be growing it, but with the cooler weather, it's helping us out a little bit. We have a couple of rows of Seneca stalker red corn. This is one that I grow year after year as well, and grow it for its ornamental appeal. When it matures, it has a deep dark stalk, and the ears of corn have red husks, and then the corn itself is really, really pretty. And we use the husks for some homemade tamales and other things, so it's a very practical corn as well. That one is a scaly bark watermelon, and then behind it is an orange glow watermelon. The orange glow is one that I grow year after year. It's a very tasty, unique watermelon that you cannot purchase, so we grow that every year. And then when we swing over this way, we have a very tightly planted row of zucchini, and early in the season we have 4 plants because we're going to be harvesting these tender baby zucchinis. They're great for stir fries. We can throw them in pastas, so we stir fry them and then throw them in pastas. You can also stir fry them and throw them in pasta salad or other types of salad. So early in the season, it's too cold, the bees aren't there to pollinate, and what we do is we take those baby zucchinis and eat them up that way. With 4 plants, we're going to get a lot of zucchini, so at some point we're going to thin out to maybe 1 or 2 plants. And as we continue along this way, we're going to be looking at some Roma tomato plants. This is our regular planting time for the summer. We have an earlier planting of Romas that we're testing out, and that's in the backyard. We have about 5 plants here, and it's starting to make some blossoms already, so that's really good to see. There's a bare spot there because we had a Roma tomato, but I think it got knocked over by a skunk, so there's a spot that's opened up for us to plant something. And then you'll see lots of potato plants when we do updates, and we always have potato chitting somewhere in the kitchen. Like for example, with this seed potato, it's sprouting, or otherwise known as chitting, and we plant them and then we get succession potato plants. This is a Huckleberry Gold. It's a new to us potato. It looks like a Yukon type potato but with purple skin, and we're gonna see if we can get some nice purple skinned Yukon potatoes. And then in this bag are some russet potatoes that we recently harvested. So we got some nice sized potatoes. We grow this in our clay soil. We don't spend too much energy and effort in growing them, so we get nice potatoes. And then most of the time we'll get some small ones, and those small ones are actually very easy to use in the kitchen. We'll clean them up really well and then throw them in a stew. Quick and easy. We don't have to worry about peeling or cutting. So the small ones are very, very practical, more so than some of the larger ones. And then we have some more small ones that are coming out of this plant. And then here's another potato plant tuft. This is a cabbage, a Chinese cabbage. So just like the Napa type, it's the long, cylindrical, almost like a watermelon shaped cabbage. And this one happens to be a green leaf variety. It actually came out of a purple leaf seed packet, so we're going to see how this one grows. Next to it is a Merlot hybrid Chinese cabbage. It's not doing too well. I think it's getting too much sun in this particular spot, so it's not as big. And once again, this is the type of cabbage that is like the Napa cabbage. So if you have ever heard of Napa cabbage, that's what that type is. Another potato plant. And then we have broad beans. Broad beans is another plant that we grow elsewhere as well to collect as biomass for soil making, and it also is a good nitrogen fixer. Also, the roots will create life for organisms in the soil, so we always have those things planted in the cooler seasons. And then tucked in here, we have some broccoli Rabe. So that's broccoli Rabe, R-A-A-B. It's also known as sprouting broccoli, but it's actually closer to mustard. So I would call this a sprouting mustard because when you cook it up, it has a slightly bitter flavor to it. It's a fast-growing plant. I rather enjoy it, so I have been succession planting these guys as well. And they were tucked in between some of the zucchini plants, and once the zucchini plants take off, they can really overcrowd something. So that's why they're in there. And then over here we have more broad beans, so that's good for biomass. And then down this way is where we harvested our russet potatoes from, and we grow them in clay, and we don't spend too much on soil amending, and they grow like weeds out here in Southern California, those potatoes. Here is a planting area that's tucked up in the back, in the behind our daylilies, and we have some peppers growing. So this tall one is a poblano pepper, and more specifically it's the San Luis variety, and we're letting it grow without chopping it. And then we have some shorter ones. Those are Thai peppers. Those are the spicy kind, also known as rooster spur peppers, and we have quite a few plants, and we're hoping to make sauce out of it. And then next to the peppers on the left we have spinach. Spinach is a really practical plant, so we're always growing them. In this open spot, we're going to fill it in with some beans. So we have some filet beans sprouting. Filet beans are my favorite type of green beans, and this one we're growing for the first time. It's Velour, V-E-L-O-U-R. It's a purple variety. I believe it's hybrid. The heirloom variety that we grow all the time, or I like to grow, is the French variety called Nickel. And then over here, we're adding growing space, and there was some cigar plants where you see the green patch of peas. We're using the peas as cover crop, and we also harvested a lot of pea shoots from it. So we moved the cigar plants to the back, and they took a little bit of transplant shock, but they're pretty resilient. You can see all the green that's growing back on them now. And once they get green again, this area will look a little bit nicer, cover up some of that wall space back there. And then in front of the cigar plants, we have planted some carnation, and then we also have some zinnia, and then this cranberry hibiscus. I keep calling it cranberry hibiscus. It's actually a different variety. It's a purple leaf hibiscus, and I call it poor man's Japanese maple because it has a very similar leaf shape. And then we have some zinnias, so we're hoping to layer, once that grows in, it'll be a nice layer of different colors and textures with also zinnia as the blooms. And then down in front, we're waiting for some more of those purple filet beans to sprout. And then in the green peas section, we're gonna plant something else as well. Moving over here, we have another good amount of space with this spot, and then we're also wanting to make sure that we consider the landscape aspect of it. So here everything is a little bit more formalized. We have garlic chive in front, and then we have oxheart tomatoes in the back. And the oxheart tomato is my favorite kitchen tomato. It makes these very big paste tomatoes. And then right in front of the tomato plants, we have some Himo Togarashi peppers. And this is one that we use to make pepper powder, and we're hoping to make a condiment out of it called yuzu kushu. So hopefully with that many plants, we'll be able to do that. A new favorite pepper of mine is the Ahi Peppers, otherwise known as beak pepper. And they make these teardrop shaped peppers that have a nice fruity hint of flavor to them. And they're great as pickles. So when we do a sweet pickle with them, kind of like cowboy candy jalapenos, but not as sweet, they're great to add to salads because of that fruity flavor. And then on this side, we have more of the purple of Ragmonia artichoke, and these guys are a little bit more purple. When it comes to artichokes, the seeds have individual characteristics. So sometimes you'll get artichokes that are the textbook version of that variety, like for instance, these purple ones. Sometimes there are artichokes that become really spiky. They'll have a lot of thorns on them, or they're different colors or shapes. So that's one of the things about artichokes, is that they don't grow true to seed. Oftentimes they do, but sometimes they don't. And then here are some of the Japonica striped maize that we have growing next to the steps. And then if you look really carefully, we have Ahi Peppers in here. This is the Hobito pepper, and these guys overwintered, and the fruit that they produce are berry size. When it's warm, they make these larger peppers. And one thing that we discovered is that with plants growing over them in the winter, it creates a nice blanket. So that's something that we're experimenting with, and we'll be sharing this technique in the future. Strategies on overwintering peppers by planting plants next to them. When you're in a warm climate like Southern California, where we don't get frost, we can overwinter peppers that way and get peppers during the winter time. Over here, as we come to an end of our update, we have this nice chard plant that's planted here to give us a little bit of color to our space. And that's going to be our end of tour. Thanks for coming out and watching and visiting. See you in the next video.